it's not possible to not trigger some people sometimes, but it is possible to have communications with people.
So we are having Shanna Small from, she is my teacher from Miami Life Center's Ashtanga Practitioners Intensive Program. Um, I'll briefly introduce her. In the regular series, I'm mostly jumping up and telling people to introduce themselves, but because this is going to be a different style, I'll be taking that part. Shanna is teaching Ashtanga and Vinyasa styles, and she has directed several programs in North Carolina. But what makes her particularly unique is that she specialized in accessible yoga and trauma conscious yoga. She has also initiated several yoga teacher training programs and again, very importantly, social justice workshops, which I was a part of. And today I wanted to invite her. I actually wanted to start this series in hizasız'da because she's actually very committed to creating discussions on inclusivity and social justice in yoga studios. So Shanna, thank you for coming.
Thank
If you
you for
have anything to add, this is the time, or else we are going to start.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay. So basically, this is going to be, I have only a few questions, and these questions are basically about setting the tone of what's coming for the next series. You were setting the tone, setting the vocabulary. So I actually want to start with the most basic question. What does an unsafe space in a yoga studio looks like for you or from the experience of your students? What do you think is an unsafe space in a yoga studio?
So, with safe spaces and unsafe spaces, I like to use the word brave space
Hmm.
because there's no way for us to really guarantee anyone's safety. It's impossible. We never know what's going to happen in the next moment.
Hmm.
So we can never guarantee safety, but it's about us bravely working together as a community to create these spaces where we feel comfortable enough to grow.
Hmm.
So that is what I would say would be a safe space or brave space.
Hmm.
It's a space where we can feel comfortable enough to let our hair down, so to speak, to exhale and to be able to take in that knowledge. That would be a space that is safe. It's a space where we can get out of our fight, flight, freeze, our reptilian brain of survival. And we can kind of transcend that for a moment and really let go emotionally, transcend that, and even be able to go into our intellectual higher mind and really learn. And
Hmm.
so this space has to be created by everyone involved.
It's a little bit complicated because there are a lot of disadvantaged groups or minority groups or people that are excluded. And is it really possible to create a space that actually can make everyone feel um, safe, let's say, or welcomed, let's say? The terms are really difficult and all of them are very loaded.
We can try because the reality is that we can't read minds. We
Hmm.
don't know what's going on inside of people. We don't know what's happened in their lives. We don't know what their trauma is.
Hmm.
Someone could be traumatized by, black shirts for
Hmm.
all I know, and they're watching this and it's triggering them. Like, there's no way for us to know what everyone's stuff is and what's going on.
Hmm.
So that's why that brave space, it's like bravely stepping in and seeing what's there. So the way that we create this is through constant communication,
Hmm.
constant learning, constant relearning, constantly asking questions, constantly shifting and growing. This is a co-creative, collaborative space that we have to make.
Hmm.
And we have to be able to listen to each other, to grow from being with each other, and have an open and vast mind. And if we have that, even if we disagree, even if we trigger each other, then we can communicate on
Mhm.
that. We
Mhm.
can learn from each other. We can figure out ways to move forward. So it's not possible to not trigger some people sometimes, but it is possible to have communications with people, to
Mhm.
learn, to be compassionate, to have an open heart, to repair, and to do better the next time. That part is possible.
I mean, I would still say that it's easier said than done. I think that was the term to
It
say, because
is.
actually I noticed that as a queer guy, sometimes I'm obviously noticing some microaggressions or some, and when I'm trying to have conversations with people about how I feel, people can really feel very resistant about this. So we say that we can have open conversations or you just open your heart and relearning, but it's never that easy, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and that's why we take like the trainings like I did with you and the group at MLC. That's why we continue to learn, we continue to grow, because that is what happens. We our defenses come up immediately and we're not open to the conversation. And that's work that we have to honestly do on ourselves. And yoga, that work is included in yoga. Yoga is always talking about questioning our thoughts, looking at our attachments, is always talking about that compassionate, open heart. So, by doing the yoga practice and really living the yoga practice and applying that to our interactions with people, then we can get better over time with learning this compassionate interaction and allowing ourselves to drop that guard that we have up when we have these conversations. But yes, it takes time, and but the time is now. We have to start building it now. If we want it in the future, we
Mhm.
have to start building it now. We have to not be afraid to mess up. We have to know that we're going to mess up. We have to not be afraid to ask for forgiveness, ask for how we can do better, ask how we can do things differently. And that's all we can do. We
Mhm.
go into the situations and then we mess up and then we learn. We do better
Mhm.
next time. We mess up, we learn, we do better next time. And then hopefully the instances of us messing up get less and less and less, and
Mhm.
we get more and more comfortable as we put in the reps.
Mhm.
It's putting in these reps that are going to help us to change and make this knowledge be something that comes more natural to us, this openness, this putting down of our defenses. But it takes work. Just like the yoga practice, if we are like, oh, I really want to learn how to do a
Mhm.
split, I'm really wanting to learn that, we put in time, we put the reps in, we watch videos, we ask questions, we look at books, like we learn about the body and what's stopping us. Like we do all this stuff because we're really interested in it. And then we put it together over time and work on our split.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing with this type of communication. We have
Mhm.
to be interested enough to put in the work
Mhm.
and to continue day to day with trying to create these spaces, even when it gets hard.
Mhm. Actually, I'll come back to what you said here, but prior to that, I want to also ask, so when I go to a yoga studio in Turkey, um, always notice that it's always the people that look alike. I'm not specifically talking, it's included, but not specifically on limited on how people look. It's about the body, it's about the socioeconomic status, it's all the of these dimensions are very similar. Where is this coming from?
I could spend hours talking about that, but there's a couple of things. I do a talk on colonization. There's a lot of what happened in history that kind of resulted in this kind of homogenization, colonization of yoga. That's basically what colonization does. It homogenizes everything because the other is scary. So it
Mhm.
has it tendency to homogenize. Also, the other can't be controlled.
Mhm.
So it homogenizes everything, and there was a process of colonization that happened in India where this information came from, and it happened several times, but the one with the British was very interesting and had a big impact on the yoga that we see today. So there was this homogenization that started to happen, and then after this homogenization, we have this self-selection process that happens. So essentially, I always use the example of, who tends to go to dance classes. It tends to
Mhm.
be people who are interested in dance and like dance. Well, in the yoga studio, if you're looking at pictures of people doing yoga online and it's leg behind the head, it's handstand, it's splits, it's all of these type of poses that require all this type of flexibility and these particular bodies. Well, then if that's the picture of yoga, then those are the type of people that are going to be drawn to it. It's just how it is. So this self-selection process happens. And then when people get there, they the ones who can do the things or who feel like they could possibly do the things one day are usually the ones that stick around, and the ones that are like, this stuff looks impossible, it's not for me, it will never be for me, they tend to disappear. So we have this self-selection process that tends to happen on all levels, even
Mhm.
socioeconomic. Who can stay around the yoga studio? It's the one who can afford the packages. It's the one who can afford in the United States, who can afford the clothes and the fancy mat and all of this stuff. So those are the ones who are going to be more likely to stick around. And so you have this kind of self-selection process that happens, and it's up to us, up to the community to see how we can balance
Mhm.
uh, and bring, because yoga is very balanced. The
Mhm.
tradition is very balanced. It's about show up where you are, and we're going to put together a practice that works for you and is going to take you to where you want to go. That's how it's worked.
Mhm.
Uh, but yet it's changed to, okay, this is what we're doing, and you got to change to fit this thing, we
Mhm.
gotta get the square peg in the square hole, like, so you gotta be square. If you're not square, you better get there. And we're
Mhm.
gonna push and pull and prod until you get there or you're gonna leave, right?
Mhm.
And that's what's happening. And so the people who are the squares that fit in the square hole, they're gonna continue. The
Mhm.
circles, they're gonna start to go away. So we
Mhm.
have this kind of self-selection process that's natural when we present this yoga that has to be a certain way and that
Mhm.
is not about who showed up.
Mhm. Actually, we had talked about this during our workshop as well. And while you were mentioning that, I remembered an anecdote, a story from my own field work when I was doing my PhD. So I was working on women's organizations of Kurdish women, an ethnic minority in Turkey. And the story was that they used to have this building, and then the municipality decided to buy another building, a fancier building, and move the woman there. And what they noticed was that the women, because they were actually working with poorer or more disadvantaged women, these women didn't want to go to the other building. And when they made the research on that, they noticed that these women didn't feel like they were a part of it because it was very fancy. They felt like they were excluded. So thinking about this story changed my entire perspective on looking at the yoga studios. Like we always look for these fancy spots or just like, cleanliness or just like everything shiny, everything beautiful. But I've never noticed that these actually also might push people out, like keep them outside.
That's such a good point. Oh my goodness. As you speak, I started to think about, I've been involved in yoga for over 2 decades.
Hmm.
And I remember back when I started practicing, a yoga studio was like basically just a room. It
Mhm.
was like a room, and there was like another room that had a toilet in it. There was no front desk. It was essentially a plain room, very
Mhm.
plain. And or you would be practicing yoga in the basement of somebody's church
Mhm.
or some room in a school. And during that time, you did see more diversity. You did see different types of bodies,
Mhm.
different socioeconomic classes of people together. You're absolutely right. And then as the yoga got fancier, fancier buildings, fancier neighborhoods, you're right. It did start to change
Mhm.
who showed up. And
Mhm.
that's such a powerful example
Yeah.
of how those things make such a big difference that we don't even think about, like the
Mhm.
location and where are we putting this place? Um,
Mhm.
what's in there when we open it? Is it like the Lululemon,
Mhm.
$150 pants?
Mhm.
Or, do we have a pair of functional $35 pants that they can
Mhm.
buy? And what
Mhm.
messages this sends as to who this place is for when you have
Mhm.
$35 pants versus $130 pants.
Mhm.
Like,
Exactly.
all that stuff is speaking to people.
Mhm.
Such a good point.
Yeah. Do you think that actually it is a responsibility to take that task to diversify? Maybe this is the fancy word that's used now, but actually make people feel more included. Because as I told you before the shooting, I was talking to a few friends, and actually they were like, um, well, is this really our job to do this? Is this really our responsibility to do this? Are we required to make people feel welcomed? And I really felt a little bit discouraged by that. But what do you think? Is this a type of responsibility, really?
I think we all have to create the world that we want to see.
Hmm.
Just period. Whatever we want to see in the world, we have to be the ones to create it. And a lot of times those statements are made by people who are privileged. They have
Hmm.
the privilege of not needing to create a space in a specific way,
Hmm.
right? They have
Hmm.
the privilege to be able to do that.
Hmm.
And so that's some work they need to do, they'll have to do on themselves, on
Hmm.
their own privilege. And when we're privileged in a certain way, we don't have to think about certain things,
Hmm.
right? That other people have to think about.
Hmm.
And so it's everyone's responsibility to
Hmm.
shift the world in the direction that they want to see. Everyone wants to feel welcome. Who
Hmm.
doesn't want to feel welcome?
Hmm.
In a space. And if there's something that we can do through love and compassion to help someone feel welcome, why is
Hmm.
it a problem? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a problem. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's everybody's job to help everyone feel welcome in the way
Hmm.
that they can. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
That was actually thank you because I was when I was talking to them, I really didn't really have an answer because I was always thinking like, yeah, everyone would want that. Everyone would want everyone to be welcomed in their studios. And when I noticed these answers, and when I've really, really felt very discouraged thinking about it, because some things don't really need to have a financial gain, for instance. I mean, as you said, I mean, do I want to have, I mean, having like one extra person feel welcome to the studio, I'm not really even romanticizing this. I'm trying to make one more person happy. And this is why I am there for like 1 hour. And I can do it slightly even better by slightly changing what I'm doing.
Something I've seen that's changed, again, I've been practicing yoga for a couple of decades. I remember when I first started practicing, where the regulars were so excited when a new person came that they didn't care
Uh-huh.
if the practice was being changed up a little bit. They
Hmm.
didn't care if you had to, like, we didn't care if you had to break something down or we moved a little bit slower. Like,
Hmm.
we didn't care. We were so happy that one more person got to experience yoga and
Hmm.
that we had one more person joining our community to be with
Hmm.
us, that we did not care that the teacher had to do certain things in order to make sure that that person felt welcome, that they understood what was going on. we didn't care. So it's also a part about the community that we build.
Mhm.
Like, I would love to see us going back to those type of communities where we're just so excited to have that new person that we're like, "Oh, yeah, you need to break some stuff down. Oh, yeah, you need to slow it down. Yeah." Like, it's not like me,
Mhm.
my. I came to do this pose and I'm gonna do it, and I don't care about that person. And why did you take that out of the sequence? We always do lotus here and you made it into crisscross. Watch it. Like, it's like me.
Mhm.
And also, like, if you're really doing yoga and practicing yoga and it's in your heart, you can take care of yourself.
Mhm.
Like, if the other class is just crossing their ankles and you want to do full lotus, you do your full lotus. What does it have to do with anyone else?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just very sad to me that it's
Mhm.
like, well, it's all about us.
Mhm.
It's chosen few group that comes, and we don't care if that person over there is comfortable or
Mhm.
likes it. It's really quite bizarre.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think it comes from trauma.
Mhm.
When I hear stuff like that, those people have something deep, deep down within them that they really need to sit with.
Mhm.
Because it's normal for us to want people to feel
Mhm.
comfortable. Someone comes to our home, we're like, welcome. Oh, yeah, take your shoes off, put them here. Can I get you some water? Do you want a snack? Hey, do I need to turn the air conditioner down? Come on in. Like, we're
Mhm.
trying to make them feel comfortable. It's part of who we are. But to
Mhm.
then open a business and be like, well, that's not
Mhm.
my job. Like,
Mhm.
wow, okay, yeah.
Mhm. Actually, I'm going to then shift the last question slightly a little bit. Well, maybe a lot. Uh, because my last question was going to be, what is a safe space, or in your definition, a brave place looks like. Um, but now maybe I'm taking it back a little bit, and I'm going to ask you, are you feeling hopeful, giving all these workshops, giving trainings? Do you see a change? Do you feel like there's a conversation going on in creating better and more comfortable places for everyone?
I feel that if one person out of the whole entire training got it,
Hmm.
then it was great. And honestly, I just feel like everything is worth my time because
Hmm.
I know what my work is and what my job is and what my duty is. And I know if I'm walking in that, then I'm doing the right thing, regardless of who changes or not.
Hmm.
But I feel that there are pockets of people who get it. And
Hmm.
I do feel that there are people who are trying their best to create these communities where people can bravely be who they are. I do believe that they're out there. So I am hopeful that it's happening. There are certain schools that are schools of yoga that are going to be behind everybody else. But
Hmm.
yeah, I do feel hopeful. I do feel that there's more people out there asking these questions, having these conversations, and trying to shift. And there definitely needs to be more,
Hmm.
but they're out there. So yeah,
Hmm. Well, that gave me hope a little bit. Thank you. Because actually, I was thinking like maybe this is like a grandiose project. I mean, um, as I said, I talked to you about this before. I worked on discrimination as well, and this is important to me. And I was after you. I mentioned I'm going to invite a scholar who is going to talk about a little bit of the minority and majority group dynamics and how this reflects in yoga studios. And while I was also having conversations with her, I just thought about like maybe I'm just doing something very useless, but maybe keeping the hopes, even like changing one person's ideas, yeah, probably sufficient, right? I mean, it's fulfilling in its
have to
also.
get out of our bubbles. Like, I definitely had a view of the yoga world, one view of the yoga world when I was in a certain bubble. And when I
Hmm.
got outside of that,
Hmm.
it was a whole different world. I had this idea of what it was supposed to look like, what it was supposed to be, what the community was.
Hmm.
And then once I got outside of that bubble, I realized that no, there are communities out here doing the things that I've always wanted and that's always been on my heart. So I think we also have to get outside of our bubbles. There are
Mhm.
loving communities out there. There's communities where people want to hear you, want to build with you, have compassion, listen to what you say. There's communities of teachers who really want to know their students and who really want to have relationships with them and who work with them on a very individual basis. Like the people are out there. But sometimes we have to um get out of like the shiny object syndrome, as my teacher
Mhm.
calls it.
Mhm.
Like we're looking at the shiny object over here,
Mhm.
thinking that that's the thing and that's the way, when there are, whole realms of other objects out here that don't
Mhm.
shine like that, but
Mhm.
are beautiful and valuable. And we just have to get out of our little pockets. So
Yeah.
it's out here. We're out
Yeah.
here.
Well, thank you. That was actually like a great starter. And I have you ever been in Turkey?
I have not.
Well, hopefully you are going to be here one day. You might visit and always welcomed and always, uh, you know, we are part of the community, even if we are really thousands of miles away, I guess. But thank you for being the first person, at least, to set this conversation here. Even if you have never been here, this has been really very valuable for me. And I hope that people are going to find some nuances that's going to be working for them. And as we build up, maybe we can start changing some things. If not, maybe we can start changing, what we think about, this, because as you said, this is actually a lifelong process.
Long
uh,
haul, long process. Yes.
yeah, never going to end. So thank you for coming, even
Thank you for
virtually.
having me.
Yeah, sure. And I hope we will meet in person one day.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, if you come to Istanbul or if I come to North Carolina, hopefully we'll be meeting and yeah, doing yoga together.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And see you again.
Bye.
Bye.